Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this session, choosing my session to attend. A bit like Andreas said, you never quite know when you do a session like this in the afternoon how many people are going to turn up and how engaged people are going to be. This stage is massive, by the way. Just going to say, huge, great stage. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased to be here because I've spent 25 years or so in rooms like this talking to people about all manner of reward and benefits kind of topics. And then the last few years, it's all kind of ground to a bit of a halt, hasn't it? So the opportunity to come out and actually just see people, engage with people, learn, because that's what we do when we come to these things, isn't it? Learn from other people. Every time I come to one of these, I learn a load of stuff, as I just did listening to Andreas. And over that 25-year period, I've spent a lot of time talking about what employees get from their employer and what employers should do to figure out what to give people, but always from the employer's perspective. It's always been a little bit of a concentration on, by my own admission, a bit of a top-down, sort of paternalistic kind of approach. So I've asked questions in these sessions or answered questions like, what makes a great reward package? Or one of my perennial and personal favourites, how do we win the war for talent? That famous question, how do we win the war for talent? And there's always been an acknowledgement in what I've talked about that it's a two-way street, but generally speaking, I've really talked about what employers need to do and what employees need to get. I think we're at a bit of a watershed now with reward and benefits generally. I think something's changed, things are changing, will continue to change. And if I think about the past 3 or 4 years, particularly as we think about the pandemic and as we come out of the pandemic, I think the opportunity is now here to do a little bit more or focus a bit more on what employees actually want rather than what employees get. And that's really what I'm going to talk about a little bit this afternoon. So I'm going to spend a few minutes at the start just looking back in order to look forward, because I think some of the lessons that we learned from the last time we had a massive, major economic and societal shock, which was the financial crisis of 2008 and immediately afterwards. I think we learned some lessons from that, and I think now is the moment when we're starting to implement some of the lessons we learned then. It's a 15-minute or so slot. It's a massive topic. I could probably spend a whole day talking about just that one topic, what do employees want and how do we give it to them. But I'm going to try and do that in the next sort of 15 minutes or so. Right, enough rambling, let's get on. So, these last few years, we've had all sorts of things coming at us as employers. We've had, obviously, the pandemic. We've had the post-pandemic, immediate post-pandemic era. We've had quiet quitting. I'm familiar with quiet quitting, I'm sure. I haven't done a Slido because this is not a Slido question, but can you put your hands up if you've heard of peak Wellbeing? Has anyone in the room heard of peak Wellbeing? No. Okay, so this is the concept that during the pandemic and immediately afterwards, employers really focused on the well-being of their employees above everything else. It was all about well-being. And as the financial crisis started to bite, and as we started to think a little bit about the cost of living crisis, well-being has been slightly pushed to the back in favour of more financial, and interestingly what Andreas was saying, more financial and financial well-being related benefits. So not so much about well-being, but more about the financial piece in the financial well-being mix. And then as we move forward, we've started to think about things like hybrid working. Hands up if you've got hybrid working in place in your organisation. Okay, so that's a lot of people. What about the 4-day week? Is anyone trialling the 4-day week? Who's doing that? Anybody? No, okay. The 4-day week, I think, is going to happen. I think, or it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And now we've got something called loud quitting. I don't know if people have heard of loud quitting. So loud quitting is kind of the opposite of quiet quitting, I guess. This is where people are essentially saying, so quiet quitting is about just pulling back and not actually really doing very much and just saying, I'm going to do the bare minimum. Loud quitting is about saying, guys, I can't do this anymore. I'm burnt out, whatever. I'm done. That's the loud quitting piece, and we're starting to see quite a lot of that. And the most famous example of that so far that I can think of is Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand Prime Minister, who essentially stood in front of the world's press and said, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. That's a really good example of loud quitting. So all these things going on. And at the back of it all at the moment is the financial pressure. We are probably going to go into recession. That's what I heard on the train on the way down this morning. By the end of the year, financial pressures increasing, mortgage rates are going through the roof for everybody. People are really struggling. And then we have to think about what's coming next. And we don't know what's coming next, obviously, because if we did, well, we could deal with it now. But there's a lot of things changing in the mix. So I said I want to look backwards to look forwards. And one of the things I thought about was, when I've stood in rooms like this over the last 10, 20 years, whatever it is, I've always talked about the same sort of issues that HR leaders and particularly reward specialists face. And it's things like, how are we going to be competitive in the market? That winning the war for talent thing that I talked about. How do we improve our processes? How do we manage the whole reward process? How do we justify the decisions that we make? These are things that have been going on for years. And then things like obvious cost control, cost management. And the biggies. How do we recruit people? Where do we recruit them from? How can we be effective in our recruitment? How do we deliver better retention? How do we attract and retain the talent that we need in our business or organisation, both at organisational level and executive level? And how do we manage things like performance in that context? Those things have been washing around forever. Now, those things are still washing around. If I talk to clients now, they tell me the same things that they told me 20 years ago. We can't recruit people, we can't retain people, we can't motivate people, we're struggling with performance, productivity is an issue. And on top of that now, and a little bit going back to what Andreas was talking about, we have to layer in some new things to think about. So the D, E and I piece, that's such a big driver now in the reward space. The ESG piece, how do we link ESG measures to reward? One of the things that's happened in the last few years is an absolute proliferation of MI. Everybody in this room probably looks at MI all the time. And if you've got a benefit platform, you're probably pulling data out your benefit platform all the time to see what are people engaging with, what do they use, which discounts do they like, which financial wellbeing package do they engage with. We're absolutely surrounded by MI. Having MI and doing something with it, though, are not the same thing. And one of the challenges that reward leaders have and HR leaders have is how to make the use of the MI in front of them. And one of the things that's been happening for many years, but it's happening really fast now, is the whole concept of integration and convergence. So I was really interested in Andreas's poll, because that idea about how many people have got more than one, for example, benefit platform is really important right now. Because many employers are struggling to coordinate all the different types of platforms and MI and benefits and all that piece together and just trying to make sense of it. The obvious thing I'd say, this is not a sales opportunity, but if you can get a benefit platform that has everything in one place and does everything for you, that's probably a good place to go right now. I think I would say that, wouldn't I? So convergence and integration, really important topics right now. So the big question, of course, is what do employees want? That is the question. Totally anecdotally, I was talking to my now grown-up children at the weekend, and I asked them this question, because they're both in the workplace. And the answer my daughter gave was, I don't really know, I haven't worked it out yet, I haven't really figured it out. I don't really know what I want. But what she did talk about was a real emphasis for her on mental well-being and mental health. That was her main focus. My son works in a different sector to my daughter. He said something similar, and then he said something that I thought was quite kind of pertinent, really. He said, what I really want is my salary to be 3 times what it is now, or house prices to be 1/3 of what they are. I don't mind which one it is. That's what he said to me, I don't mind which one it is. And that was really interesting for me, because one of the things I didn't want to talk about today was money, was pay. I wanted to talk about other things. But it struck me after speaking to him, I'd already done these slides, by the way, it struck me after speaking to him that is still really important. Pay levels, giving people, paying them what they're worth, paying them according to their contribution, all that sort of stuff is still really important. But the focus in these kind of conversations tends to move away from pay. And I decided to look back, and I pulled out some slides. I haven't got them with me today. I pulled out some slides from a talk that I did similar to this about 10 years ago. And the entire slide deck was about pay. There was hardly any talk in my slides about benefits. And where I did talk about benefits, they tended to be financial benefits, so pension, car allowances, that kind of thing, bonus, variable pay. There was not very much in there at all about what we would recognise in the 21st century as benefits. So I just thought, I just need to put out there that employees do still want to be paid a decent wage for a decent day's work, or whatever the phrase is. But these are the sorts of things that people do talk about when we ask them, what do you want? When we ask employees, we go out and say, what is it you actually want from your benefits and your reward package? They talk about things like opportunity, choice, growth. And it's all very personalised. It's all very much about me as an individual. They want to be able to support the causes that matter to them. They want to be able to enjoy a flexible work-life balance. And these are not, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, it's just that this is what they tell us. And right in the middle there, in huge letters, it says communication. And this is so important because what employees also want, what workers want, what we all want, and we're all consumers in one sort or another, workers are just consumers in another format. What we all want is to be communicated with. We want to understand how to engage with the services that we have in front of us. We want to know how we can get the best out of our benefit programme. We want to know how we can progress. And as employers, we have to keep reminding people what it is that we're doing for them and what it is that they want that we're giving to them. Because if we don't keep reminding them, the value of what we provide just gets completely eroded. So communication is such an important part of this process of giving employees what they want, because giving them what they want and then reminding them that you're giving them what they want are two completely different things. So the constant reinforcement of what it is that we as employers are providing to the employees is a vital part of giving them what they want. I decided to, I don't normally do lots of numbers, but I decided to do some numbers for this one. Because I was looking at a report by Ceridian. And it's a really, it's a recent report, and it's very good. And if you get a chance to look at it, you should look at it. Because it talks a lot about how employees are feeling and what it is that they want from their workplace right now. I don't work for Ceridian, by the way. It's a third-party piece of information that I found very insightful. Just a couple of things to pull out of that. So that survey has found that 66% of employees are happy in their jobs. Now, I don't know what your reaction is to that. I was quite surprised by that. I thought that was quite a high number, 66% being happy. That's not my experience of the people that I mix with. I don't mean just in my work. I mean, generally, I don't feel like 2/3 of people I talk to are happy in their job. I don't know whether that resonates with you as a number. So I thought that was a really interesting number to pull out. And then the number, 45% of employees have work-related stress, or think they have work-related stress, feel they have work-related stress. I'm not a betting man, but I think if I were to put money on this, I think that number has grown in the last few years compared to how it was certainly 10 years ago. Now, that might be partly because stress has increased in the workplace, or it might be because people are more aware of what that means in the workplace. I can't quite decide. It's probably a bit of both, actually. 47% of employees in this survey said that their mental health was suffering at work. That's quite a high number. That's a really, really high number. Mental health is suffering in the workplace. That's a big number. 25% of employees aren't satisfied with their benefits. Now, conversely to the 66% in the first number, 25% actually seems quite high to me. I think, quite low. 25% aren't satisfied with their benefits. That means 75% by definition are satisfied with their benefits. That was a surprise to me. I thought that number would be a different mix. And then this was the one that jumped out at me. And again, I think this partly links back slightly to what Andreas was just talking about. 1 in 5 employees could only survive 1 week on their current savings. That is a terrifying, terrifying prospect. The interest rate's gone up. I don't know if you know this, the interest rates have gone up at lunchtime to 5%. Mortgage rates, therefore, for people on variable mortgages are starting to go up again. And I understand all the arguments about, well, we had 16% interest rates back in the day. It's a different scenario now. The relationship between wages and house prices are completely different. So the idea that 1 in 5 could only survive a week on their savings is absolutely terrifying. And this really is just to link back. Again, Andreas and I had never met, we'd never spoken before, but just linking back to what he said, you really need to think about as employers how you can help those people in your workplaces deal with what is, that's a ticking time bomb right there. And if you don't help them deal with it, it will go wrong at some point. I thought this was an interesting piece. This was from a Gartner survey. 65% of employees surveyed by Gartner said the pandemic made them rethink the place work should have in their life. It doesn't specify what rethink means, but I think we probably know what it means. I suggest that it means people have taken a bit of a view to say work is perhaps not quite as important as it used to be prior to the pandemic. I want to think more about me right now. So, how are employees feeling right now? This is a different survey by a company called Drewbury. Third most common benefit offered by employees is access to counselling. Counselling is EAP type counselling. Counselling generally, very highly used benefit in the workplace. Insurance policies that protect employees and their families, most attractive benefits. Nearly half of employees are satisfied with the benefits they receive from their employer. That's against that 25% number that I gave a moment ago, so a different survey. 41% of employees would most like to see work from home options. That's that whole work-life balance piece. So again, Drewbury, an insurance provider, another survey, a good one to look at if you get a chance. So what I thought we'd just spend a couple of minutes talking about, next sort of 4 or 5 minutes, is how we figure out what it is that employees want from the employees that work for us. And what I thought about was, what we were thinking about was, there are different characteristics. Different employee groups require different things. So you might want to think about your employees, and this goes back again to something that Andrea said. Think about what they actually want. Think about from the data that you hold on them, from the information you know about your employees, and think about categorizing your employees into different groups. Have you got groups, concentrations of young people, concentrations of more mature people? Think about the ethnicity, the age, the interests, not just the data, but what do you know about them? Again, Andreas made a couple of points on this earlier. So we can just think about a couple of scenarios when we think about what employees want and sort of group people, just group them into different types. So we might have, in our example here, 3 different group types: a group of employees that are developing in their career, a group of employees that are established, and a group of employees that are heading towards the end of their working life. And then we might think about the different kinds of benefits that we can offer all those groups, and just think about what might appeal to which group. So in our developing group, for example, I won't go through all these because you can read, but in our developing group, for example, the things that might be most important to those guys: regular communication, things like health and well-being, employee assistance programs. They're young, they want access to information, savings and loans and salary finance to help them on that journey, access to a virtual GP. That might be the kind of thing that appeals to them. In our established group, there'll be some of those benefits that are similar, that apply to that group as well, but maybe they're more interested in things like agile working. Maybe they're starting to think about pension and retirement. Maybe they want better medical insurance. And then for our more mature age group, the group that I fit into, maybe we're thinking more about pension and retirement and health and well-being. Maybe they're the things that are most important to those guys. So think about the employees that you have, a bit like a Rubik's Cube, the employees you have, the types of characteristics they have, not just the data, but something about them as individuals or groups, and the kinds of benefits you offer, and think about how each maps to the other, just to see if you can develop a concentration that says, we can offer these kind of benefits to these groups of people and we know they'll appeal. And this will help then with the whole recruitment and retention, performance, productivity, motivation piece. I wanted to do a graphic that was like a fruit machine. You know, a fruit machine, you pull the handle, the things spin round. We didn't have the wherewithal to do that in the marketing team that did the slides. So we came up with this benefit segmenter idea. And this is just, it's just a bit of fun, this really. The idea is that I press the button that says segment 1, and it tells me a group of people or a particular characteristic, and then it tells me something about them and what benefits might appeal. So I press, there you go, and the fruit machine spun round. So our 16 to 20 age group, single employee, single person, entry-level income, their aspirations, their attitudes are very now. It's all about now. They're not really thinking long term. And something that might appeal to them is a cash plan. That's just an example. So this is my fruit machine. I'll press the button again. I'll do it a couple of times. Here we've got somebody who's 26 to 35. They've got children. They're professional. They own a home. What they're really interested in is some healthcare to support them, see them through the challenges they might have in their life right now. So the idea is that we can just start to think about our employees and our groups of employees and map the benefits to them. That's really what this is all about. So this is something we call the SSP model, where we segment employees. We think about what they look like, what we know about them, divide them into distinct groups. We shape the benefit offering, determine which groups and which employees fit into the groups and which benefits might appeal to them. And then we position the benefits, we curate the benefits offering, in this case the reward offering, to meet the needs of that group. So dead quick, really short because I'm running out of time. Employees are like consumers. They want what they want when they want it. They want to get access to it when they want to get access to it. They want the accessibility and configuration and personalisation and communication through the platforms that you use. And they will become in the future more like partners
where they are selecting from a tailored menu of the benefits and services you can offer them and choosing what they want, when they want it, where they want, in place, right now. That's all this is about. And that's it. Thank you very much.